and welcome back to another episode of A Cup of Joe. My name is Joe Escobedo, and with me today is Oliver Arscott. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Oliver is the Senior Content Manager for Cushman Wakefield, which is one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the world. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Why should commercial real estate companies be investing in content marketing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think the interesting thing about working in such a service-oriented industry is that really you're competing on your expertise, right? So if you have those expertise amongst your team, you're far more likely to be considered a viable partner for a lot of these big corporates who are looking for whether it's from the occupier side, whether it's redesigning their office space, or whether it's finding a new location for their headquarters or their flagship retail store. They want those expertise. And I think one of the best ways that a business can demonstrate those expertise is through content marketing.
Okay.
I think the other part of it is that really in CRE, there are three main players.
Okay.
And so when you have three players who are all multinational, global, powerful, cover pretty much every aspect of CRE, you need to find a differentiator. And so I think content marketing, again, demonstrating those expertise is a really good way to do that. And I think, fundamentally, content is great here because we play in so many different channels. We play in the retail space, in the industrial space, in logistics, in offices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Data centers is a huge one here in Singapore. And as a content marketer, that's really exciting because I can go, we can take all of these individually and create content marketing strategies around them. Whereas for a lot of people, a lot of my sort of opposite numbers in other companies, they're stuck with one particular section of an industry, and that can be quite disheartening. So the world really is our playground, and that's quite an exciting thing to content marketing.
Okay. Now, I think you are in an exciting place, but also a challenging place because you're working with so many different markets, so many different industries, so many different audiences. It can be challenging to create a content strategy. So how do you go about creating a content strategy with all those elements in play?
Our content strategy has developed really around this idea of developing knowledge in depth. We have here in Singapore alone about just over 1,500 people. Across Asia Pacific, 14,000, globally around 60,000. So, we have a phenomenal depth of expertise, depth of knowledge. That's not just focused at that C-suite level, although obviously those are incredibly smart folks. But we have these pockets of deep subject matter expertise. So when I came into the role just under a year ago, what I was looking at is a lot of content that was being developed by our research team, who do a fantastic job, but not a huge amount of effort to tap those SME areas throughout the business. So I really wanted to come in and engage those folks, engage them in the idea of being spokespeople, not in a sort of formal communication sense, but being spokespeople around their area of knowledge. And these are people who fundamentally love what they do, right? They've spent 15, 20 years developing these areas of knowledge, and I want to give them that platform to show off. So that's really what we've been working on over the last year, building out a successful blog, the traffic for which has increased on a lovely curve, as we all like a good curve, and really stabilizing what I would think of as that sort of top of the funnel, that discovery layer.
Another thing you talked about was leveraging your internal subject matter experts, whether it be consultants or researchers. So how do you really get them involved in the process? Because that's always a challenge in a lot of organizations. How do you get people involved? How do you get them excited about creating content? I
think, again, going back to this idea of when I sort of came into the role, the focus was very much on the research team. And I'm incredibly hungry for more of that research content. But I'm also aware that research team, they want to be creating big cornerstone pieces that are of real value. They also are very involved in the buying process. They're brought in to meet with clients, and so there's that business perspective as well. And so their ability to sort of sit down and churn out blog posts is sort of more limited. But also, that's not really what we want to be using them for, right? These are people from more of a academic background or who have that sort of research capability. We want them to be focusing on research. So for me, sourcing content from the subject matter experts within the business, it's a couple of things. It's about firstly creating a database of where that knowledge sits, which, I come from more of a startup background. I could just turn to the guy on my left and go, well, I know he knows about this. Let me ask him about it. In a business of this size, that's more of a challenge than you think. So actually, half the battle is finding out where these pockets sit. And then the second half is it's sort of hearts and minds. It's about persuading business people who are very busy. Firstly, that creating content is not as difficult as they think. And I think a lot of people think back to school and being forced to sit down and write an essay, and that's not what we're asking people to do, right? It doesn't work. So for me, whether it's getting them to fill in a survey type form about a particular topic that we can then take and turn into an article, whether it's just sitting down with someone over a recorded interview like this and plumbing them for that information. One of the things that we need to keep doing better is sitting down at the beginning of the business year and going, what are our major themes for this year? With each of the service lines, and then working out how we can create a content calendar around that, rather than just it being this sort of ad hoc conversations. And that's always, I think every business struggles with that, right? So having a stronger editorial calendar is something I'm always striving towards, and it's sometimes easier than other times. But you're absolutely right. You want to be tying it back to the business goals, to the areas that we're aiming for growth in, rather than just gravitating towards the sexier topics, which are more fun to work on, but maybe not quite as valuable.
Exactly. Now, this is a big mistake I see many organizations do when it comes to blogs. They either have no call to action, or they have a call to action that's like, contact the salesperson. So you're immediately jumping from, okay, I came across your website, I found this helpful, to going straight to the salesperson.
Yes.
Which doesn't necessarily happen a lot, especially if you go back to the journey you talked about. So I love that you have, once again, you're guiding them. So if you're interested in this, you'd be interested in this, or sign up for the newsletter, or something that's a kind of smaller kind of action for them to take, rather than jumping into the hard selling.
With the technology that we have at our fingertips, we can do whatever we want, right? The sky really is the limit in terms of the way that we can nurture, the way that we can use cookies to track and everything else. And here in Asia Pacific, well, maybe excluding Australia, where I know their email sort of sign-ups are slightly more challenging, but certainly here in Asia, you have the freedom to do what you want without many restrictions. Now, obviously, as a responsible marketer, you don't want to be spamming, you don't want to be doing any of that, but you can try things. And I think my interest is really in this idea of moving towards an account-based marketing model where you're able to identify who are the decision makers, who are the influencers in that decision-making process, and then how can you create these content campaigns where they're engaging in content, and you're not pushing them straight to a phone call. You're not setting it up as an opportunity in Salesforce. This is a process where, because the sales process is so long, we have that time, we have that ability, and we're not B2C, and thank goodness we're not B2C in a lot of ways. No offense to the B2C marketers out there, but we're in a fortunate place, and I think we shouldn't jump the gun. Let's not be premature. Let's nurture and have this idea of nurturing, providing content at the right time. That's interesting, that's engaging, that comes from different sources. It's not just coming from the same spokesperson over and over again. And that slowly gets them towards a place where they might inquire, or that's suitable then to have a conversation. With lead scoring these days, you can do all this. So it's just about being patient, and I think patience can sometimes be a challenge. If you're thinking on a quarterly basis, or you just want to get these numbers in, but it pays dividends. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another good point you brought up is content marketing. At least for me, the goal should be to get that conversation, to get that meeting, to get that phone call, whatever it is. And not necessarily to make that sale, but it's to influence that sale. It's to build that credibility up front. So when you have that sales meeting, people are already aware of your expertise. They have trust in you, and so it's much easier for the salesperson to go in and have that conversation. All right. Well, thank you so much, Oliver.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you sharing your insights. And if you enjoyed today's session, please feel free to share it with someone who might find it helpful. Be sure to subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thanks again.
Thanks.